Hello guys, welcome back to Lindy Vanner. Today we're going to be talking about a topic that is seen as somewhat controversial within the van life community, and that topic is insulation. Now stay with me, I'm going to break it down in easy to understand steps, tell you how we've insulated our vans, and hopefully that will help you have a greater understanding of how you want to insulate your van. Stay tuned. Oh yes, welcome back to the channel guys. Thanks for joining us. Please, if you can just hit subscribe below, it really helps us out and supports our channel. Thanks a bunch. So in today's video, we're going to be talking about insulation. Now, this is seen as a very complicated topic by a lot of people, and it really doesn't need to be. There is a lot of controversial advice, or how should I say, contradictory advice online on how to insulate your van. It's not really like a hard and fast science, it's not like a house, and even at the best of times, even in the UK, it's difficult enough to insulate a house, let alone a camper van. I want to explain to you the basics behind insulation so that you can understand it from a factual point of view. Now, the insulation that I'm going to talk about in this video is expanding foam, Celotex, polystyrene, and recycled plastic bottles. There's a few other different types of insulation out there, such as loft insulation, mineral wool, these types of insulation, but I'm going to leave them out of this video because I don't believe they belong anywhere near a van because they really soak up water. Now, even if you've got a vapor barrier, it doesn't matter. There's no point in putting temptation in the way for the water. Now, the important thing to look out for when you're researching your insulation is the R value of the insulation. This is the thermal resistance of your insulation per thickness. Now in this video I'm going to be talking about 100ml thick recycled plastic bottles, 50ml thick Celotex and 25ml, and also expanding foam. So all the R values I'm going to be giving you are per those thicknesses. Don't just think that the thicker the insulation, the better the insulative properties. Let's take for example 50ml Celotex. That's got an R value of 2.25 meters squared Kelvin per watt, whereas 100ml recycled plastic bottle has got 2.27, so not that much more, even though it's twice the thickness. 50ml of polystyrene has got an R value of 1.25, and expanding foam has an R value of 3.7. I'll touch slightly on foil-faced bubble wrap, but only as a means to create a vapor barrier between the inside of the van and the bodywork and structure of your van. Foil-faced bubble wrap has no insulative properties at all. You won't be able to find any R values for foil-faced bubble wrap. It's purely a reflector rather than an insulator. If foil-faced bubble wrap is in contact with something hot or cold, it's actually going to conduct the heat rather than insulate against it. Aluminium is one of the most conductive materials there are out there. That's why it's used in heat sinks and things on electrical components. So when we came to insulating our van, we decided that we wanted to use as much 50ml Celotex as possible because this is the most efficient way of insulating a van. Now, it's not the cheapest by any means, and in our first van we used 50ml of polystyrene, and as I mentioned, polystyrene has just over half the efficiency of Celotex. So I knew that when we were doing this van, I wanted to invest a bit more in it, so I used the Celotex insulation board. There's 50ml Celotex in the roof and in the walls, and there's 25ml Celotex in the floor. In the doors, we use the 100ml recycled plastic bottle insulation that you can get from B&Q, and we also used that above the headliner of the cab. Now, in order to achieve that R value of 2.27, the recycled plastic bottles cannot be compressed. You can't buy it and then squish it down. It won't maintain the same insulative properties. Insulative? Is that a word? I don't know. Having said that, when we put it above the headliner in the cab, it's all we could do. I thought it was the best solution for the purpose, even though it's not necessarily perfect. Also, I used the recycled plastic bottles in the doors. You don't want to be filling the doors with lots of expanding foam or hard Celotex because you've got cables and locks within your doors. So you want to make sure that everything can still move fluently within the doors rather than making them rigid. So we used the Celotex in the ceiling, and we used these little sticky back spikes that we would stick on the ceiling, and then we could pierce the insulation board over the spikes and then bend the spike over. This way the boards would stay up there until we can put, you know, the cladding on and what have you. We also used those spikes on the back doors where the windows would go if it had windows in the doors. Those spikes were really handy and really saved us a lot of aggro. When we started insulating the van, we started within the ribs and within the parts of the bodywork that we couldn't get to with any other type of insulation. So we filled all of these ribs with expanding foam, but beware, expanding foam really does expand about 4 or 5 times. So after we'd filled all the ribs, all the structural components with the expanding foam, we then went ahead and put on our Celotex all over the inside of the van. This took quite a while and it was quite fiddly up in the top sections of the van, but we got there and then filled all the gaps with expanding foam again. In the floor we had some sort of timber structure, just 20mm thick. I think we used 27mm battens and then filled all the voids with 25mm Celotex. We also made this step, so we narrowed the step because the step on the Sprinter from factory is really wide and we didn't need that. So once we'd stuck all the Celotex up, we then covered it with this foil-faced bubble wrap. But again, we only used it as a vapor barrier so that we would seal all of the insulation within the walls. The Celotex boards, they are closed cell foam, which means that they don't absorb water. But the expanding foam that I used was open cell. Now, there's such a small amount of expanding foam in the van, because we've got the vapor barrier as well, we should be absolutely fine. Made sure that all the edges of the foil-faced bubble wrap were covered in tape so that there were no voids for any moisture to get in behind. And then once we'd finished with the foil-faced bubble wrap, we were then able to start cladding. From what I can tell, the way that we've insulated the van is the most efficient way you can do it. Most people do it this way. This isn't anything innovative. I just wanted to break down the reasons for why we used the materials that we did. One last thing I should also talk about is you want to try and minimize any cold bridging within the van. So a lot of the exposed metal work within the van we've covered with this two-way stretch carpet, and it's really good. It means that there's no cold surfaces in the van for our breath or any water vapor from the propane to condensate onto. Obviously there's exceptions with the side door and the back doors themselves, but there's only so far you can go. We didn't want to put any of the two-way stretch material on the doors, because then when you open them, if it's raining, all the material is going to get soaking wet and what have you. Another point I'd like to make is that we didn't run our electrical cables within the insulation. We wanted to be able to get to the cables if we had to. We ran all of the electrical cables before we did insulate, but as I say, the cables go alongside the insulation. They don't go underneath it. When we were in Scotland over New Year, we were super warm inside the van and it was very cold outside. It was just above 0. So we're confident that this is insulated really well. We've also got the Chinese diesel heater which helped, but to be honest, when that was on, it was too hot inside the van. In this super gorgeous weather that we've got at the moment, inside the van is still pretty cool, which is great. Obviously again, we've got the roof fan and what have you, but it doesn't get roasting inside the van like the old van used to. Now, that might also come down to the colour. The old van was dark blue and this one's silver, but I think mainly it's because we've really put some effort into insulating the van properly. I hope this video has been useful, guys. Please leave any comments in the comments section below. I know everyone's got their own point of view on insulation, but the fact of the matter is that our values are science and you can't ignore them. As long as you apply some good principles of common sense, then you'll be fine. Please like and subscribe, guys, and we'll see you in the next video. Thanks a bunch.